This is going to feel different. It's a conversation, not an interview, with Sonus Faber's Paolo Tezzon. You know, the guy's in deep. First of all, he's one of us. He is an audiophile, first and foremost. And he's been designing speakers, designing the drivers. He sees the biggest possible picture. And I think when you're talking to Paulo, you're basically talking to Sonus Faber. I mean, he does talk about his team. He's not the guy. He's not the only guy there. But the speakers definitely, yeah, you talk to him and you go, yeah, I get it. That's why the speakers sound the way they do. So, without any further ado, let's get to this very interesting conversation. Your very first speaker was a Sonus Faber?
Oh, yes.
How did that?
Oh, yes.
And where did it come? How old were you?
Now I'm 44.
No, but when you first got your first speaker?
I got my first speaker when I was 19, 18, or just 19, around that. I can't remember exactly. But it's interesting to notice that the first time, I still remember, the first time I went in touch with the band, I was 14. At that time, my parents were trying to make me change my mind because I wanted to get a motorbike and they were scared. So they started to bring me seeing different things in order to make me change my mind and get something else. And I remember that the first contact I had with Sonus Faber was the advertisement available at that time, talking about the early 90s. All the Sonus Faber of that time were sitting on a marble bench.
Yeah.
It was a very famous advertisement, but the Extrema, which was sitting on its own column. And somehow I kept this into my mind, and it stayed into my mind, and the following years I grew with this passion about music reproduction. And few years later, 4 or 5 years later, I had a little bit of money, and the brand came out with a speaker called the Concertino first series, which was the very first entry level, and it was an amazing speaker, and I got them. And this is how the story with Sonus Faber started.
Well, just because I know that they're going to be thinking this, what was the rest of your system?
At the time,
yeah.
At the time I had preamplifier and power amplifier from Rotel. It was the RB970BX, the power amplifier, and RC970BX, the preamplifier. I had a Pioneer CD player, the one with you know, it had sort of a turntable, so you should place the CD upside down.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also was able to get into a second-hand market, a Torrens TD160, and I had a DIY phonostage tube, only, a tiny one, which probably I didn't mount it perfectly because it was sounding so and so, but that was my system.
That's a nice system.
Back in the days, yeah.
So you were an audiophile at an early age.
Yeah. And then I ended up being a vinyl guy. Currently, I don't own a digital source.
Ah, really?
Yeah. I was blown away a few years later when I heard, for the very first time, high-hand quality reproduction of vinyl. I was blown away. And I ended up selling my CD collection of the time, and little by little getting them back in vinyl. And we're talking about the mid-90s. Vinyl wasn't the thing it is today,
right.
And so it was pretty hard to find vinyl.
Cheap,
yeah.
Used ones were cheap, I should say.
Yeah.
The speaker designer may know a lot about what their goals are for the speaker itself, but what they don't know is the room that it's going to be playing in, because rooms vary so much, and the electronics that are going to be used with it, right?
Yeah.
And the kind of music that they're going to, I mean, the variables are a lot, right?
A lot.
But I think the variable of the room itself, and one of the things that surprises me, or not really, is that even in owner's manuals, I don't know about Sonus Faber's, they're not too specific about ideal close to the wall, ideal, I guess it's obvious not to put speakers in corners, but the optimum listening distance from the speaker itself, all of that stuff is sort of vague. Possibly because you don't want to like rule something out for somebody to say, oh, it says in the manual I can't do this, so that's why you wouldn't want to be too specific. But still, I'm circling back to the idea that you don't know where the speaker is going to be used. You know?
Yeah.
And how do you cope with that? That
Well,
insecurity.
you have to end up accepting this, first of all, because your speakers you design are gonna end up in many different places.
Right.
And but what you learn is that certain design solutions helps the match. First of all, for me, you mentioned also the amplifier, and this is something you can do about it. One of the things I care the most is the electrical behavior of my designs. So I never let the impedance to drop to a value which is 85% below the nominal ones. And if it does that for a very tiny range of frequency. And in that range of frequencies, the phase rotation has to stay within, has to be as close as possible to zero, and for sure staying within plus or minus 36 degrees rotation. And so, first of all, I am designing speakers in such a way they are virtually an easy match for any amplifier. And this is something you can do as a designer.
Right, definitely.
Second thing, I try to address a little bit with my tonal balance how human hearing apparatus works. You know that we are not sensitive the same to any frequency, and even our sensitivity to frequencies changes in reason of the amount of SPL. So when you start considering what's happening to human hearing apparatus, when you have an SPL in the listening spot around 80-85 dBs, and you go see what's going on over there, you have some indications about what is appropriate as a tonal balance in order to sound natural. And then, of course, yeah, you nail it, that's the listening environment. The listening environment is something you can't do anything, basically.
Right.
You just want your bass to be as controlled as possible, because you don't want the bass to create too much problems in the listening environment. But then, you know, the setup of the speaker in a room, it's a science in itself.
Sure.
And there is no rules, there is no do this, do that, and you're fine. Stay this distance from the wall, because those are the sort of questions I've been always asked. It depends. It depends from what you want, and it depends also from what the listening environment allows you to do. And we are building a training program, and we are going to teach a setup process, which we found can help.
For dealers?
Yes,
Okay.
which we found can help people in dealing with so many different environments. But when I got questions, the questions are aiming directly to the simple final indication: how much distance from the backbone, how much distance from the sidewalls, how much distance from the speakers. There is no rule.
Right.
This is sad but true.
Right. But there could be general guidelines.
Oh yeah, this is
Like
what we write in
not
our
up
owner's
against
manual.
the wall,
Yes,
a minimum.
don't go in the corner.
Right.
Provide a decent distance from the back wall if you can, please. Don't sit too high, don't sit too low.
Yeah.
Those sort of things.
That's it. But you know, it's interesting, you just said 85 dB. Now,
I mean, the range is from, I would say, from 75 to 85. This is what you measure, even if you're pretty loud, this is what you measure on an average basis in the listening spot.
I've heard that since 2011, Sonus Faber has been using not off-the-shelf drivers, but original designs. And you are the designer of those drivers?
Yeah.
Tweeters, mid-ranges, woofers, etc.?
Yes, together with my team. Yeah. Well, actually, there is. We should consider there is a transition, because in the early days, Sonus Faber was getting off-the-shelf drivers. Then we moved to customizing a little bit existing drivers, and this is how we built, together with the relationship with our vendors, the ability to then design our own drivers.
and you know, this is one of the things that fascinates me about audio is that ephemeral quality. Right? You can't
Is what, sorry?
ephemeral, like you can't touch it. You know, you can't freeze sound.
No,
It keeps
you can't.
moving in time, right? So determining what is good or better, like this new tweeter is better than the previous generation tweeter, you can measure it and you can listen to it. Those are your two choices, right? I guess you could also just do technical things with it to determine if it's technically better. But the thing is, what measures better isn't necessarily sounding better.
Correct.
You accept that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true, right? So then it comes down to your judgment and other people that you trust to say,
Yes.
this new tweeter
Yes.
sounds better than the
Yes.
other tweeter.
Yes, I mean, the point is that, of course, saying it's better or not, it is always a judgment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Sometimes it's pretty evident because the values we share in saying things about music reproduction, the amount of values we share is huge. So there are levels of that some judgments can be shared by a lot of people. But then there are some others differences which can be an argument, can become an argument. My solution, our solution, is to get the deepest possible understanding of music. Listen to a lot of music, attend to as many live concerts that you can, enjoy music, live with music in many different ways, and somehow you will build a stronger and stronger understanding of music, more reliable understanding of music. Mm-hmm. And this is the final tool to judge transducers, to judge music reproduction in general. Of course, you can measure many different things, but I had a lot of evidence that same measurements led to totally different sound results.
Yeah.
I remember more than 10 years ago now, 12 years ago, we were using a transducer based on parts produced in a certain area of the world. And then the supplier, the vendor came, look, this is the same exact transducer. The parts are identical, the measurements are exactly the same, but is 30% less expensive because the parts are coming from another area. Take a measurements, look at that, and I took all the measurements that I could do at the time, and the measurements were exactly the same. I mean, exactly the same. But then, when you started listening and compare, it was night and day. Night and day. So yeah. Measurements are a tool.
Yes.
Very powerful ones. They allow you to avoid mistakes. But then there's something more. And it's cultural, in my opinion.
Cultural? What do you mean by that?
I mean, culture is about experience. And as more, I mean what I've said before, as more as you experience music, as more as you live together with music and you raise your music understanding. For me, attending live shows is the perfect. You can experience in how many different ways an electric bass can sound, a violin can sound, a horn can sound. And then somehow you start to recognize what the horn sound is about, what the violin sound is about, what the drum set is about. And this knowledge is leading you in taking choices.
The other thing I learned about you is that you're keenly aware of the sound of the speaker sitting on the floor, either on a stand or a tower speaker, and the energy being transmitted from the speaker into the floor.
Of course.
But you don't like spikes. Is that a fair?
Well, basically, when it comes to spikes are designed for two purposes. The first thing is a physical evidence. Since there's the overall weight of the speaker is laying into a tiny surface, spikes helps a lot for stability, which is a very good thing. And on the other hand, spikes are couplers, so they couple the speakers to to the surface underneath, and they perfectly allow any sort of vibrations created by the drivers, particularly in the low frequencies when there's a lot of excursion, to travel away from the speakers, which is again a good thing. Problem is that, particularly when you're dealing with huge speakers which have a very good performance in the bass, you're dealing with quite a lot of vibrations. And those vibrations basically could affect the behavior of your listening environment. In fact, the ideal solution with spikes should be to have a huge mass underneath the spikes being decoupled from the other surfaces of your listening environment.
From the floor.
From the floor, basically, yeah. And in fact, one of the tricks I have seen several times happening successfully was to use huge, strong marble or other stones bases with some rubber underneath, because then there is a much bigger mass than the speaker, which is keeping in itself the vibrations traveling away from the speakers, but those vibrations are not going into the listening environment. And this is the best recommendation that I can provide, but this is not possible anytime, of course.
Yeah.
So, starting from a certain level of performance, we offer a system which is called zero vibration transmission. Basically, it's about avoiding the transmission of vibration at certain frequencies to the floor, starting from 80 Hz and below, because are the most negative for the listening environment. Of course, those vibrations are staying in the speakers. So anytime you provide this solution, you have also to provide something which is able to dissipate those vibrations inside of the speakers. Right. And this is where our multiple tuned mass dampers comes to action. Because they are suspended masses inside of the speakers which oscillates in antiphase with those vibrations, and they dissipate those vibrations. Anyway, so this is the combination of the two solutions which helps the speakers to be somehow neutral in coupling with the listening environment. There are a combination of springs and elastomers, depending from the model, which are decoupling the speakers from the floor. But then, this way you avoid those vibrations to travel away from the speaker. They stay into the, and this is good for the environment. This is good for the overall environment. But this is not good for the speaker. You have to dissipate those vibrations somehow. And so there is a combination of calculated suspended masses, which are about metal discs, which are decoupled from the structure, and they sort of oscillate in antiphase in order to dissipate through it the vibrations remaining into the speakers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask you the most important question.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for making them look so beautiful?
The responsible for making it look so beautiful is Livio Cucuzza, which is the head of our industrial design department. And he is an industrial designer, so very, 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 very skilled, you can tell. He works on a group level, and he was very good in understanding the design elements belonging to the brand and keep reinterpreting them over time.
Yeah, it's just stunning.
Yeah.
It's interesting that no other speaker manufacturer has even, it seems like has even attempted to make speakers that look like yours other than the shape. That they did that, but the actual overall feel of it, no one would mistake it for anything else.
Well, you know, we became over the years, we have more than 35 years of history right now, recognizable for certain design elements, for certain materials, and in many different fields, you know, there are different brands doing the same thing, and none of them is trying to imitate what is doing the other. Each of them has to be successful, in my opinion, has to be faithful to itself.
Sure.
And this is what we do, and this is what other players in this field are doing correctly, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Paolo. This was fun.
You're very welcome.
For your time.
Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
My name is Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show, coming to you from World of McIntosh in New York City. And I hope to see you guys back here again very, very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.